At my daughter's wedding, I unwrapped her gift in front of dozens of guests. I expected something sentimental, a token of love to mark her new life. Instead, inside the carefully wrapped box, there was a tiny folded envelope. When I opened it, my heart stopped. Only 2 words were written there, hurriedly, almost scratched onto the paper. Run tonight. For a moment, I thought my eyes deceived me. A wedding day is supposed to be joy, unity, family. But those words in my hand were not joy. They were fear. They were a command. My daughter Anna was telling me to run. But from what? From whom? Good morning, my dears. My name is Dorothy Hale, though everyone calls me. I'm 73 years old, and today I will share with you a story that still chills my bones every time I remember it. If you love true life stories filled with emotion, betrayal, and survival, please subscribe to Voices of Mama Ruth. Stories like this are not just entertainment. Sometimes they are warnings. And trust me, after hearing what happened next, you will never look at a wedding gift the same way again. I folded the note with shaking hands, slipping it back into the envelope as quickly as possible. The music was playing. The bells had just finished. Guests were smiling and clapping. Yet inside I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. I looked up, and across the aisle, my daughter's eyes met mine. For a split second, her bridal smile faltered. She tilted her head, ever so slightly, and mouthed a single word only I could notice. Please. That small gesture confirmed it. This was not a prank, not nerves, not confusion. Something was terribly wrong. My Anna was trapped in something she couldn't speak out loud, and the only way to reach me was through this hidden note. I wanted to rush to her, to demand answers, to pull her away from the altar. But I couldn't. Everyone was watching. I had to play along. So I clutched the paper in my hand, my pulse racing, pretending to smile as guests brushed past me with congratulations. The satin box still lay open in my lap, innocent and deceptive, while my chest burned with questions I couldn't ask. And as the photographer gathered everyone for pictures, my daughter looked at me one more time. That same stiff smile, that same tilt of the head. My Anna wasn't just a bride that day. She was a messenger, and her message was clear. Run tonight. I felt a cold shiver climb my spine. Around me, the perfume of roses and the echo of laughter filled the air. But beneath it all, something darker pulsed, something I couldn't yet name. One thing I knew for sure: I would not ignore this warning. Whatever it was, I would find out. And I would survive. The wedding day should have been flawless. From the outside, it looked exactly like every mother dreams. White roses lined the church aisle. Sunlight streamed through stained glass, and the air smelled of polished wood and perfume. Guests murmured with excitement as the organ played softly in the background. My daughter, Anna, looked radiant in her gown, and the smile on her face was perfect. Too perfect. A porcelain smile, unmoving, as though stitched into place. I sat in the second pew, my gift box resting against my knees, and tried to convince myself that maybe I had misunderstood. Maybe the note wasn't from her at all. Perhaps it was a cruel mistake, a misplaced envelope meant for someone else. But deep down, I knew better. A mother always knows when her child is hiding something. As the ceremony went on, small cracks began to show in the flawless picture. The groomsmen whispered among themselves, too distracted for such a sacred moment. The maid of honor checked her phone repeatedly, sliding it back into her bouquet when the photographer glanced her way. The groom Michael kept squeezing Anna's hand with such force that her knuckles turned pale. Each time she winced, he leaned closer with a smile. The kind of smile that tells outsiders everything is fine while silently demanding obedience. I tried to focus on the vows, but my mind was on the note. Run tonight. Why tonight? Why not now? Was danger coming for me or for her? My pulse quickened each time I looked at Anna. She avoided my gaze most of the time, but whenever her eyes found mine, there was that silent plea again. A daughter reaching for her mother without words. The reception hall was decorated with crystals that caught the candlelight, shimmering like stars. Guests laughed and clinked their glasses. The newlyweds posed for pictures, and the music was cheerful. On the surface, everything was perfect, but I noticed details no one else seemed to see. The groom's mother never left her son's side, whispering instructions into his ear. Two of his uncles stood near the entrance with arms folded, scanning the room as though guarding something or someone. When I excused myself to the restroom, I caught one of them following me with his eyes until I disappeared around the corner. And then there was the gift. The box Anna had handed me before the ceremony still sat in my purse, heavier than it should have been, as though the tiny envelope inside carried the weight of 1,000 secrets. I had folded the note carefully and hidden it between tissues, but my fingers kept brushing against it, needing to confirm it was still there, still real. At one point, Anna slipped away from her groom and came to greet me. Her smile never wavered, her voice soft for the guests around us. "Mom, are you enjoying everything?" she asked, the perfect bride's question. But when she leaned closer to kiss my cheek, her whisper was different. "Please, trust me." I felt my throat tighten. Trust her? I had no choice. She was my daughter, my only child. But how could I protect her when I didn't even understand the danger? The rest of the evening passed in a haze of music, laughter, and clinking glasses. I watched Anna raise her champagne flute with the groom's family, her smile plastered on her face. I watched as the groomsmen huddled in corners, speaking in low tones. I watched as Michael's hand gripped her waist possessively, never letting go. The longer I observed, the clearer it became. Something wasn't right. And then it happened. As the cake was brought out, a folded slip of paper slipped from Anna's bouquet and fell near my feet. My heart nearly stopped. When I bent down to pick it up, my hands trembled so badly I almost dropped it. This time, the words were even shorter. Only one. Tonight. The laughter of the room blurred into distant noise. My pulse roared in my ears. Whatever was coming, it wasn't tomorrow. It wasn't next week. It was tonight. And I realized with icy certainty I didn't have much time. When I unfolded the second note, the single word "tonight" stared back at me like a threat carved into stone. It was smaller than the first one, hastily written, torn from the corner of some program or menu card. Whoever slipped it into Anna's bouquet didn't have much time. My hands trembled as I tucked it deep into my purse. But my mind raced even faster. The first message had said "run tonight." This one simply repeated the urgency. Tonight. There was no doubt anymore. Someone wanted me gone before midnight. I tried to steady my breathing, pretending to smile when guests came near me. I laughed when they laughed, nodded when they toasted, but inside my body felt like a drum. Every heartbeat pounding with questions. Was it Anna who wrote both notes? Or was someone else trying to warn me about her? The handwriting looked similar, but under the dim reception light I couldn't be certain. The atmosphere of celebration pressed down on me like a mask I could no longer wear. I began noticing details that seemed insignificant before. The groom's cousin slipped out the back door 3 times during the meal, returning each time with flushed cheeks and whispered words to Michael. A bridesmaid avoided my gaze, her face pale, as if she knew more than she wanted to reveal. And every time my daughter raised her glass, her hand trembled, almost spilling the champagne. The satin box from earlier still weighed heavily in my purse. Guests assumed it was a gift of jewelry, a sweet token for a mother on her daughter's special day. But I knew it was more than that. It was a message disguised as a present, a cry for help wrapped in paper and ribbons. Every time I reached inside my bag, brushing the folded notes, I felt like I was holding a secret bomb no one else could see. At one point, Michael, the groom, approached me directly. His smile was wide, charming even, but there was something behind his eyes, something cold, calculating. He placed a firm hand on my shoulder. "Mrs. Hale," he said, "we're so glad you could be here. It means the world to Anna." His words sounded sweet, but his grip lingered too long, pressing into my skin like a warning. I forced a smile, murmured something polite, and gently pulled away. But the impression of his hand burned against my shoulder long after he walked off. The dinner dragged on, music swelling, guests laughing louder as the night wore on. Yet beneath it all, I felt an invisible clock ticking down. My eyes darted across the room, looking for allies, for signs of who I could trust. That was when I noticed something strange. On the lapel of Michael's father's tuxedo, there was a tiny blue pin. I had seen it earlier but dismissed it as decoration. But now, looking closer, I saw two other men wearing the same one. Not guests, associates. They didn't mingle, didn't dance, didn't laugh. They watched. Anna noticed me staring. For the briefest second, she lowered her glass and gave me that same silent plea, her lips moving around a single word without sound. "Please." Then she turned back to Michael, letting him kiss her cheek as if nothing had passed between us. The urge to act surged inside me. I wanted to grab her, to pull her away from all of this, but my instinct screamed to stay silent. If I revealed too much too soon, I might put us both in greater danger. The notes told me to run, not fight, not argue, but run. So I waited, counting the hours, planning in my mind. When the band began to play louder, I slipped away from the crowd and into the hallway near the kitchen. I pressed my back to the wall, pulled out the notes, and read them again by the dim light of a chandelier. The handwriting was indeed Anna's. Messy, hurried, but unmistakably hers. Relief and terror hit me at once. Relief, because it confirmed she was reaching out to me. Terror, because it meant the threat was real, close, maybe already inside the walls of this celebration. I was still clutching the notes when I heard footsteps. Heavy, purposeful. A shadow stretched across the wall, growing closer. I quickly shoved the papers back into my purse and forced a smile as Michael's uncle appeared at the corner. His eyes flicked down to my bag, then back to my face. "Everything all right, Mrs. Hale?" he asked smoothly, though his tone was less a question and more a test. "Yes," I lied, my voice steady though my palms were slick with sweat. "Just needed some air." His smile didn't reach his eyes. He nodded once, slowly, and walked past me into the darkness of the corridor. But as he disappeared, I realized something chilling. The blue pin gleamed on his jacket, catching the chandelier's light. That was when I understood. Whatever this was, it wasn't random. It was organized, and my daughter was caught in the middle. I stepped back into the ballroom, blending with the crowd, but my decision was already made. I wouldn't wait until morning. The notes were clear. I had to run, tonight. The ballroom glittered like a dream, but the longer I watched, the more it felt like a stage set hiding something rotten behind the curtains. Chandeliers rained golden light across polished floors. Guests twirled on the dance floor, their laughter echoing beneath the vaulted ceiling. From a distance, it looked perfect, but once you noticed the cracks, you could never unsee them. At first, it was the way Michael's family moved. They weren't mingling like guests at a wedding they were monitoring. His mother circled the room, speaking in quick whispers to relatives who nodded too quickly. His father stood near the exit with the other men, all three wearing the same tiny blue pins. I had counted 5 of those pins now, gleaming faintly under the lights like silent signals. I pretended to sip my champagne while observing. Each time a guest laughed too loudly or drifted too close to Anna, one of the men would shift position, as though repositioning pawns on a chessboard. It wasn't protection, it was control. Anna floated from table to table, thanking guests, posing for photographs, her smile never cracking. But her eyes, oh, her eyes told the truth. Each time they flickered toward me, I caught the tremor behind them, the unspoken plea, trust me, run. The music swelled as the band played a lively tune, couples clapping along. I forced a smile at the strangers beside me, but my hands clenched around my purse so tightly my knuckles ached. Inside it lay both notes, fragile pieces of paper that now felt heavier than bricks. I had read them so many times that the words carved themselves into my mind. Run tonight. And then came the moment that froze me. As Anna passed near the cake table, she stumbled slightly. Michael's grip snapped around her arm, steadying her before anyone else could notice. To the guests, it looked like a tender gesture. But I saw her flinch. I saw the pressure in his fingers, the bruises it promised. And when she caught my eye again, she mouthed a single word, barely shaping it with her lips. Please. My stomach turned. This wasn't just a wedding gone wrong. It was something darker, something Anna couldn't say out loud. The red flags kept piling up. I noticed one of the groomsmen slipping a phone back into his pocket after showing Michael a message. I couldn't see the screen, but I saw the way Michael's jaw tightened, his eyes scanning the crowd immediately after. Searching for me? Later, when I excused myself to the powder room, I realized one of the men with the blue pin followed me down the hallway. He stopped near the door, pretending to check his watch. But when I emerged, his eyes darted straight to my purse. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The message was clear. They were watching me. I walked back into the ballroom on trembling legs. My body screamed to run then and there, to bolt into the night. But the note hadn't said run now. It had said run tonight. That distinction haunted me. Why tonight? What would change after midnight? I returned to my seat just as the toasts began. Glasses clinked, laughter bubbled, and Michael's uncle rose with a practiced smile. To family, he declared, raising his glass high. Everyone cheered, but my eyes fixed on his lapel. The blue pin gleamed again, a cold glint against the golden light. I touched my purse one last time, reassuring myself that the notes were still safe. My heart pounded so hard it rattled my ribs. I didn't know the full picture yet, but the pieces were falling into place. My daughter wasn't warning me of some vague danger. She was trying to save me from these very people, the ones smiling, toasting, laughing as if this were an ordinary wedding. And then, as the music softened and the next dance began, Anna slipped close to me once more. Her bouquet brushed against my arm, her lips barely moving. After midnight, don't go home. Her eyes glistened, and for the first time that day, I saw tears threatening to fall behind her mask of a smile. That was when the truth struck me with brutal clarity. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't paranoid. This wasn't some mother's worry spiraling out of control. There was a plan, and I was in the center of it. The chandelier above flickered once. Just a second, barely noticeable, but enough to make the hair on the back of my neck rise. The night wasn't over, and whatever danger awaited, it was coming soon. The more the night dragged on, the more I felt like a prisoner dressed in pearls. The chandeliers sparkled, the orchestra played its cheerful songs, and the laughter of guests rose higher and higher. But inside me, there was only silence, dense, suffocating silence. I kept touching the notes in my purse, feeling the edges of the paper as if they were a lifeline. Run tonight, after midnight, don't go home. 3 warnings, all from my daughter. And yet here I was, surrounded by smiling faces and clinking glasses, pretending nothing was wrong. Every fiber of my body screamed for me to act, to stand up, grab Anna by the hand, and shout the truth for everyone to hear, to demand answers, to demand freedom, to demand safety. But my instincts, sharpened by fear, told me something different. Confrontation now could be fatal. Whoever these people were, Michael's family, their associates, the men with the blue pins, they were organized, prepared, and watching me. If I exposed what I knew too soon, I might not live long enough to find out why my daughter had begged me to run. So I played my part. I clapped at the speeches. I smiled at the jokes. I even pretended to laugh when Michael's best man made a crude toast that left Anna's face pale. But inside, I was counting the hours. The notes had been clear. Tonight. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Tonight. That meant whatever danger was coming would strike soon after the wedding ended. When dessert was served, I excused myself once again, this time stepping outside to the garden. The cool air hit my skin, calming the storm inside me for just a moment. I pulled the notes from my purse and studied them under the faint glow of a lantern. Both in Anna's handwriting, both hurried, desperate. There was no mistaking it now. But why warn me to run instead of herself? Why not escape together? That was the question that gnawed at me. Unless the danger was directed at me alone. Unless they didn't want Anna harmed, only me removed. My blood ran cold as the realization formed. Was I the target all along? The sound of footsteps jolted me from my thoughts. I quickly shoved the notes back into my purse just as one of Michael's uncles stepped into the garden. His silhouette loomed against the lantern light. He smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "Beautiful evening, isn't it, Mrs. Hale?" His eyes lingered on me too long, scanning my hands, my purse, my every movement. "Yes," I managed, forcing calm into my voice. "The air is refreshing after all the noise inside." He nodded, but his gaze remained sharp. "You should enjoy it while you can. Nights like this don't last forever." His words carried weight far beyond casual small talk. I smiled tightly, excused myself, and hurried back into the safety of the crowd. My heart pounded like a drumbeat in my ears. They knew. They suspected. Maybe they even knew about the notes. Back inside, I found Anna again. She was surrounded by bridesmaids, but her eyes locked on mine instantly. For the briefest moment, her smile cracked. She mouthed something across the room. "Trust me." That was it. That was all she could give me in public. And it was enough. I understood then that I had only 2 choices: flee silently, or confront them and risk everything. On the dance floor, couples swayed to a slow tune. I stood at the edge, frozen, torn between love for my daughter and the instinct to save myself. Could I really leave her here with them? Could I run without knowing the full truth? My purse felt heavier than ever, dragging against my shoulder like a bag of stones. Inside it was my decision written in ink. My daughter hadn't begged me to fight. She hadn't begged me to stay. She had begged me to run. And so, while the last guests raised their glasses, I began to plan. I checked the exits, the shadows, the spaces where I could disappear. I memorized the timing of the staff carrying trays, the sound of doors opening and closing. I even slipped my phone into my pocket and sent a quick message to my neighbor back home. Don't expect me tonight. By the time the band announced the final dance, I had made my choice. I wouldn't confront them here, not with their eyes on me, not with their numbers, not with Anna still bound to them by vows she couldn't yet escape. I would run. But the question remained how, and from whom. As I stood to leave, Anna's voice floated across the room, carried by the music, soft enough for only me to hear. Please, Mom, don't go home. Her words sealed it. Tonight was no longer about choice. Tonight was survival. By the time the last dance ended and the guests began saying their goodbyes, my decision was carved in stone. I would not go home that night. The notes in my purse were no longer just paper, they were my lifeline, my roadmap out of danger. I kissed Anna on the cheek as she embraced her new in-laws, and though her lips whispered polite thank yous to the crowd, her eyes spoke only to me. Run. I left the reception hall with deliberate calm, as if I were just another tired guest heading home. But inside, my heart thundered like a warning drum. Outside, the night air was cold, sharp against my skin. I glanced at the time on my phone, 10:47 p.m. Every tick of the clock carried weight. Midnight wasn't far. When I reached my car, parked beneath the dim glow of a street lamp, something inside me screamed not to open the driver's door. I froze. The window looked too clean, too perfectly untouched, as though someone had been waiting. My hands trembled as I stepped back. Instead of getting in, I turned and began walking down the street, blending with the departing crowd until I slipped into the shadows of an alley. I pulled out my phone and, with fingers shaking, ordered a rideshare under a different name I kept saved for emergencies. A habit I had formed years ago, never knowing it would save me now. The car would arrive in 15 minutes. 15 endless minutes. As I waited, I ducked into a narrow passage between two buildings. The smell of damp stone and old wood filled the air. I pressed my back to the wall and listened. At first, only silence. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate, echoing against the pavement. My chest tightened. A man in a dark suit passed by the alley entrance. His head turned slightly, scanning, his eyes glinting under the streetlight. A tiny blue pin gleamed on his lapel. My breath caught in my throat. I pressed deeper into the shadows, praying he wouldn't step inside. After a long pause, he moved on. Only when his footsteps faded did I let out the air I'd been holding. 11:02 p.m. The app showed the driver 2 blocks away. My pulse quickened with every passing second. I reached into my purse, touching the folded notes for strength. Run tonight. Don't go home. Finally, a small gray sedan pulled up at the curb. I stepped out from the shadows and waved cautiously. The driver, a woman with tired eyes, rolled down the window. Dorothy, she asked. My heart skipped, but then I remembered I had used my alias. Relief washed over me when she said the name I'd typed. I nodded quickly and slid into the back seat. As the car pulled away, I glanced out the rear window. Under the same street lamp where my car sat waiting, another vehicle idled now, black, engine humming. A man leaned against it, phone pressed to his ear. My stomach dropped. Can you take a different route? I asked the driver urgently. Not the main road. Something quieter. She gave me a strange look in the mirror but nodded. The sedan turned sharply, weaving through side streets. I kept checking the mirrors, and my worst fear came true. A pair of headlights appeared behind us, following every turn. The black car. The driver's voice trembled. Is someone following us? Yes, I whispered, clutching my purse. Just drive, please. The chase stretched on for blocks. Each turn we took, they mirrored. My mind raced. If they caught me, it wouldn't matter what the note said. I had to disappear. At the next intersection, I made a desperate decision. Stop here, I shouted. The driver hesitated but pulled over. I handed her double the fare in cash. Go. Don't wait. Before she could argue, I slipped out of the car and into the shadows of a small park. The black vehicle slowed near the intersection, headlights sweeping across the benches and trees. I ducked behind a hedge, heart hammering so hard I thought it might echo. The car lingered for a moment, then rolled past slowly, hunting. I waited until its taillights vanished before pulling out my phone. A new message had arrived. My breath caught as I read the name Anna. For the first time that night, she had texted me directly. Don't go home. Meet me at 6 a.m. Pier 17. Trust no one else. The world tilted. My daughter was not just begging me to run. She had a plan. She was risking everything to lead me to safety. I glanced at the time. 11:38 p.m. I had less than an hour until midnight. Less than an hour until the unknown danger Anna had warned me about came crashing down. I clutched the notes tighter, whispering into the dark night. I'll run, Anna, but I need to live long enough to see you again. And with that, I began the longest night of my life. The city never feels more silent than in the hours just before dawn. The streets were empty as I walked, every shadow stretching longer than it should, every sound of distant footsteps sending a tremor down my spine. My phone vibrated softly in my pocket, and I pulled it out to reread the message that had changed everything. Don't go home. Meet me at 6 a.m. Pier 17. Trust no one else. The letters blurred from the tears stinging my eyes. My daughter had finally spoken directly, breaking the wall of polite smiles and hidden notes. But why the pier? Why at dawn? Why not now, in the safety of the crowded reception, or in the secrecy of a restroom? Questions raced through me, but one thing was clear. Anna was risking everything to guide me, and that meant the danger was not only real, it was immediate. As the minutes crawled toward 6, I found a small cafe near the waterfront that had just opened its doors. I slipped inside, ordered nothing, and sat by the window, watching the dark line of the river. My mind replayed every detail of the wedding, the blue pins, the whispers, Michael's tight grip on Anna's arm, the forced smiles. It all pointed to something larger than family tensions. Something planned, something dangerous. At 5:58, I made my way to Pier 17. The wooden boards creaked under my steps, the smell of salt and diesel heavy in the air. Boats rocked gently against their ropes, the water black under the first hint of dawn. I stood at the edge, clutching my purse, scanning for her. And then, out of the mist, she appeared, Anna, still in her gown, though the hem was torn and her hair had fallen loose from its pins. She looked younger and older all at once, like the child I had raised, but also like a woman carrying a secret too heavy for her shoulders. She ran into my arms, and for a moment, the world stopped. But when she pulled back, her eyes were wild, urgent. She reached into her bouquet, what was left of it, and pressed something into my hand. A small flash drive, cold against my palm. Mom, she whispered, her voice shaking, you can't go home. They wanted you to sign papers, transfer things into their names. The wedding wasn't just a wedding, it was a cover. They needed you out of the way. My breath caught. Out of the way? Why me? Because your name still controls everything, she said, tears streaking down her face. The accounts, the deeds. Dad left everything in your name. Michael's family thought marriage would be enough. They thought once we were tied together, you would be easy to pressure. But when they realized you might resist, they started planning something else. Something worse. Her words sliced through me like glass. Suddenly the notes made sense. The blue pins weren't just decoration, they were symbols of membership. Michael's family wasn't just wealthy. They were part of something bigger, something secret. The gift had been no accident. It was Anna's desperate attempt to protect me while she played her role under their eyes. I clutched the flash drive, feeling its weight. "What's on it?" I asked. "Emails, documents, transfers," she whispered quickly. "Proof of money laundering, fraud. They wanted you to sign the last set of papers to make it all look legitimate. That's why the warnings were for tonight. After the wedding, after the celebration, they planned to bring you to their house. You would have signed or you wouldn't have walked out." A chill ran down my spine. Images flashed in my mind. Michael's uncle watching me in the garden. His words, "Nights like this don't last forever." The way the men with pins never laughed, only observed. The black car that followed me. It all aligned into one terrifying truth. I had been marked. "Why didn't you run to?" I asked, gripping her shoulders. Anna shook her head. "If I left last night, they would have known I betrayed them. They would have gone after you faster. I had to stay, pretend. But you," her voice broke, "you had to survive." The boards of the pier groaned as a boat shifted nearby. I looked around, my nerves sparking. "What do we do now?" She glanced toward the horizon, where the first rays of dawn painted the water in streaks of gold. "You give that drive to someone you trust. Not the police. Michael's family has connections. A lawyer, maybe. Someone clean. Someone untouchable." Her words were cut short by a distant hum. My blood ran cold. A black car had pulled into the parking lot near the pier. The headlights swept across the water, growing brighter as the engine idled. Anna's grip on my hand tightened painfully. "They can't find us together, Go. Please, Mom. Run now." Her tears glistened in the morning light, but her voice carried the same urgency as the notes she had slipped me all night. "Run tonight. Don't go home. Trust no one else." And as I turned to leave the pier, clutching the flash drive to my chest, I realized the nightmare wasn't over. It was only beginning. The flash drive felt like fire in my hand as I slipped it deep into my purse. My daughter's eyes begged me to go, but my legs felt like stone. The black car in the parking lot hummed like a predator waiting for its prey. Its headlights swept across the pier once more, and I ducked instinctively, pulling Anna close before letting go. "Go, Mom," she whispered fiercely, her nails digging into my hand. "They can't see us together. They'll know." Her voice cracked, but her resolve was stronger than I had ever seen. She pushed me gently toward the shadows of the pier. I stumbled, turned back once to see her standing there, framed by the rising dawn, her bridal gown glowing faintly in the light. She lifted her bouquet as if adjusting it for the car's benefit, hiding the fact that her lips mouthed one last word to me. "Run." I obeyed. My feet carried me into the maze of docks and warehouses that lined the river. The sound of the car door opening echoed behind me, followed by voices low, commanding, "Mail." I pressed myself against the rough wood of a warehouse wall, clutching the flash drive so tightly my fingers ached. Then my phone buzzed. For one breathless second, I thought it was Anna. But the message wasn't from her. It was from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Meet me at the corner of Dock Street, alone." My first instinct was panic. It had to be them. A trap. But something inside me whispered otherwise. The timing was too sharp, too deliberate. I slipped through the narrow alleys, my every step echoing on the damp stone, until I reached Dock Street. There, leaning against a battered sedan, was not a man with a blue pin, but a figure I hadn't expected. Mr. Callahan, a liar I had once met years ago when my husband passed. His face was older now, but the sharpness in his eyes was unchanged. Mrs. Hale, he said softly, glancing over his shoulder. Your daughter reached out to me weeks ago. She knew something was wrong. My throat tightened. She planned this. He nodded. She gathered what she could, but she couldn't risk keeping it herself. That drive you're holding? It's enough to bring down more than just Michael's family. There are politicians, bankers, names you wouldn't believe, but they'll destroy you if they know you have it. I hesitated, torn between disbelief and the weight of the flash drive in my purse. Why me? Why target me? Because your assets, your house, your accounts, your inheritance are the last missing piece. They needed your signature to make everything appear legitimate. Without it, the whole operation wobbles. With it, they could wash millions clean. His words cut deeper than the cold morning air. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. All those smiles, all those toasts. The grand wedding, it was never about Anna. It was about me. The sound of tires screeched nearby. The black car had circled back. Headlights flared, cutting through the mist. Callahan stepped closer, urgency in his tone. We don't have much time. I can protect you, but you need to trust me. Give me the drive. Every instinct screamed to clutch it tighter, but I forced myself to think. Anna had risked everything to get it into my hands. Could I hand it over so easily, even to someone claiming to be an ally? No, I said firmly, surprising even myself with the strength in my voice. Not yet. I need proof of who's on my side. I won't hand over my daughter's risk to another man's promises. Mr. Callahan stared at me. Then, slowly, a smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Good. That's exactly what she hoped you'd say. She told me if you refused to trust easily, then you were ready. Take the drive to Mr. Weber. He's clean. He'll know what to do. Before I could respond, the black car's doors slammed shut. Shadows spilled into the street. The men with the blue pins were coming fast, their footsteps echoing like thunder. Go, Mr. Callahan barked, shoving me toward a narrow alley. I'll buy you time. I ran, the boards of the pier rattling beneath my feet, the morning light breaking across the river like a blade of fire. Behind me, voices shouted, sharp commands that sliced the air. But ahead, I saw the faint glow of the city awakening, and with it, the fragile thread of hope. As I ducked into another alley, clutching the flash drive, I realized something had shifted. For the first time since the note had fallen into my hands, I wasn't just running in fear. I was running with purpose. They wanted my silence, my signature, my compliance. Instead, they had given me reason to fight. The hunter's headlights swept the street one last time, but I was already gone. By the time the sun rose above the city, I was miles away from the pier. The streets were alive again, commuters rushing, horns blaring, the world oblivious to the fact that I was carrying evidence that could destroy powerful people. My hands trembled as I clutched the flash drive. Every second that passed felt like borrowed time. Callahan's words echoed in my head. Take it to Weber. He's clean. I didn't know who Mr. Weber was, but Anna and Callahan had both risked everything to protect this one tiny object. That was enough for me. I reached the office district just before 8 a.m. and stopped in front of a tall glass building with golden letters, Weber and Associates, Legal Consulting. For a moment, I hesitated. What if this was another trap? What if they had anticipated every step? But then I remembered Anna's eyes, fierce, terrified, pleading. I pushed the door open. The receptionist looked up immediately. "Can I help you, Mum? I need to speak with Mr. Weber," I said quietly. "It's urgent. Tell him. Dorothy Hale. It's about Anna." Her expression changed instantly. She picked up the phone, whispered something, and within seconds, a tall man in a gray suit appeared. His hair was silver, his eyes steady. "Mrs. Hale," he said softly, "I was expecting you." Before I could respond, he gestured me inside and closed the door behind us. "Anna reached out 2 days ago. She told me what she'd found. She also said if anything went wrong during the wedding, you would come here." My knees almost gave way. I sank into the chair he offered, my purse still clutched like a lifeline. "They're following me," I whispered. "They know I didn't sign. They know I ran." Mr. Weber nodded calmly. "Then we don't have much time. Let's see what she gave you." I handed him the flash drive with trembling fingers. He inserted it into his computer, and within moments, files flooded the screen. Contracts, offshore transfers, coded emails, and images of documents bearing my name. My heart dropped. "There it is," he murmured. "They forged your authorization on several accounts. They were preparing to finalize the transfer tonight." "Tonight?" I gasped. He nodded grimly. "If you hadn't run, they would have made you sign one last set of wedding gifts. In reality, those papers would have transferred control of your late husband's entire estate to a shell corporation they control. You were the final piece of their puzzle." A wave of nausea hit me. "Can we stop them?" He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carries both danger and certainty. "Oh, we already have. These files are explosive. I'm forwarding them to federal investigators, encrypted through a secure channel. And Mrs. Hale," he paused, meeting my eyes, "you're going to vanish for a while." Before I could protest, he pulled out a small black envelope. Inside were new IDs, a prepaid phone, and a one-way train ticket. "Your daughter planned this too. She knew the risk. You need to disappear until we know it's safe." I stared at the items, the weight of them settling like chains and freedom all at once. "Will Anna be safe?" "She's safer than she's been in months," he said. "Her cooperation is already known to a few key people in law enforcement. If anything happens to her, this entire network burns." For the first time in what felt like forever, I exhaled. The pressure in my chest loosened just slightly. The nightmare had form now, faces, motives, proof. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was right. The phone on his desk buzzed. Weber picked it up, listened, and his expression hardened. "They're here," he said simply. "2 men asking for you by name. Black car outside." My pulse spiked. "What do we do?" He closed the laptop, slid it into a leather case, and handed it to me. "Take this and go through the back door. The agents I contacted are already on their way. They'll intercept them, but you mustn't be seen leaving through the front." Every instinct screamed at me to run again, but something inside me, something stronger, whispered no. Running had saved me. Now, standing my ground would free me. I turned to him. "You said you sent the files." "Yes. They're secured." "Then I'm done hiding." Before he could argue, I walked straight to the window overlooking the street. The black car was there, the same one that had followed me from the wedding. 2 men stood outside, scanning the crowd. But now I wasn't the same woman clutching her purse in fear. "They wanted me to disappear," I said quietly, "because they never thought I'd have the courage to speak." Mr. Weber smiled faintly, pride flickering in his eyes. Then let's make sure your voice is the one they can't silence. Minutes later, the first police sirens cut through the city air. Agents swarmed the street. The black car tried to pull away, but two other vehicles boxed it in. The men in suits were pulled out, shouting, furious, defeated. I watched it unfold from the window, the morning sun gleaming off the windshield like justice made visible. My hands trembled, not from fear this time, but from the rush of something I hadn't felt in years. Control. For the first time since opening the cursed wedding gift, I wasn't running anymore. I was free. 2 weeks have passed since that morning. 2 weeks since the sirens, since the arrests, since the sound of doors closing on the people who thought they could destroy me. The world outside went on as if nothing had happened, but inside me, everything was different. I now wake up in a small rented house by the sea, far from the city, far from the noise, far from the shadows that once followed me. The waves are the first thing I hear every morning, and sometimes I wonder how long it's been since I truly listened to silence without fear. Weber calls every few days. He tells me the case has expanded, names, companies, even officials involved in Michael's family network. The evidence Anna and I risked our lives to protect has become the cornerstone of a major investigation. It's strange, knowing that something born out of terror has turned into a weapon for justice. But what matters most to me is a message that arrived 3 days ago. A simple text from Anna. It's over, Mom. I'm safe. They can't touch us anymore. I must have read those words 100 times. Each time, they carried a new kind of relief. Not the frantic relief of survival, but the calm of finally exhaling after years of holding my breath. Yesterday, she called. Her voice trembled at first, and so did mine. We spoke about everything and nothing. About the sea breeze, about the quiet, about how strange it felt to live without looking over our shoulders. At one point she said something that made me fall silent. Mom, when I wrote that note, when I told you to run, I didn't know if I'd ever see you again. But I knew that if you survived, I'd finally be free too. That was when I cried. The kind of tears that wash, not wound. I realized then that our survival wasn't just physical. It was emotional. We both escaped a prison built from fear, guilt, and silence. For years, I had believed that love meant sacrifice, that giving everything, money, trust, even dignity, was what a mother should do. But love without respect is not love. It's surrender. Now, I spend my mornings walking along the beach, letting the sand cling to my feet and the sun warm my skin. Sometimes I see families, mothers with daughters, laughing together. And though it hurts a little, it also heals. Because I know Anna and I will get there again. One day, when the scars have turned into stories instead of wounds. I've started painting again. Not for anyone else. Not to please, not to fill silence, but simply because I want to. My first painting after all this was of a small boat in the distance, sailing toward the light of dawn. I named it Run Tonight. People say that when you lose everything, you discover who you really are. I think that's true, because what I lost wasn't just safety, it was illusion. And what I found was myself. Last night, before going to bed, I wrote a letter to Anna. I didn't write as a frightened mother anymore, but as a woman reborn. I told her I forgave her for the secrets she had to keep, and I thanked her for the courage I didn't know I still had. I ended it with the same words that once saved my life. Run when you must, but never from yourself. As I sealed the envelope, I looked at the horizon through my window. A faint golden line above the water, the beginning of another day. For the first time in so long, I wasn't waiting for anything bad to happen. I wasn't waiting for the phone to ring, for a knock on the door, for the next crisis. I was simply living. And that, I realized, was the truest kind of freedom. Not the absence of fear, but the courage to exist beyond it. My name is Dorothy Hale, and this is my story, a story that began with a wedding gift and a note that said "Run tonight," and ended with something far greater than escape. It ended with the rediscovery of myself. So if you've ever loved too much, given too much, or silenced yourself for the sake of others, listen to me, my dear. It's never too late to choose peace. It's never too late to start again. If my story touched your heart, subscribe to Voices of Mama Ruth for more real stories that remind us pain can break us, but it can also rebuild us. Share your thoughts in the comments. I always love hearing your reflections. And remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away.